I grind for the love of the game. That's him, Natron Clean. Flyin J, that's me. We grind for the love of the game. Had to dive into the initial Yahoo ranks ADP. And so that's what we're doing today. Welcome back to Projecting the Jump. We're gonna attempt to do a quick version of our longer pods. Usually we go about an hour. But Yahoo 6 days ago dropped their initial ranks, which are up. Dan Titus did the initial ranks, and we just combed through them first glance, and we wanted our first reactions on players that we feel like are buried, and we're wondering why they're so buried, and we want you to be aware of it ahead of time. And players that we think are too high. So we're going to do, seems low, seems high, ADP comb through. We're also going to have a very first at Projecting the Jump where my insurance have told me that Zoom has a function where I can share my screen with you. So for the YouTube viewer, we're going to actually look through the rankings with you. So you don't just have to see our faces. You'll actually be able to see the list for yourself, and you can play along at home. If you see a guy we miss, you think's too high or too low for your own personal research, you should jot it down.
Yeah, this will be fun. This will be a step forward into the digital age for us, which is well, I forgot to even mention this. So I've been out of cell phone service for the last 4 days, and so the for the long-term listeners, like Jamie's usually he got all his notes on his computer or on his phone, and I usually have construction paper. Being out of cell phone service last 4 days, I just printed the internet off.
Oh my God.
And so I printed off like 80 pages of I used like a whole ream of paper and printed off everything that I could think of that I might want for this. And so I spent the last 4 days up at this cabin, just like flipping through these pieces of paper. And so the fact that you're about to show a on a side-by-side screen the actual rankings is seems pretty shocking to me.
I have to ask you, did you hear at the end of my appearance on the Advantage podcast with Michael Fiddle, did you hear my shout out to you, what I said about you?
I did. I appreciate it. I thought it was totally accurate. It was like a co-host who is afraid of the internet. I forget how you phrased that, but I thought it was really good.
I think I was like, he's not really a computer guy. He's kind of antiquated. I could have went with Renaissance Man, but we go antiquated. I was like, but he's great. You're gonna love him, But we'd love to have Michael Fiddle on. He's has an invitation. I think we're gonna make that work, and I do think you guys will get along great. And he just kind of looked at me like, "What do you mean he's not an internet guy?" I was like, "Well, you just gotta know the guy." Anyways, so yeah, we're back. It is Labor Day weekend. We're recording on the evening of September 1st. So that's a timestamp for you. So let's go ahead and get into it. Allow my intern to pop over here and show me again how to share my screen. Thank you so much. I'm afraid we can't pay you this month. Okay, so here we are. We're in the 260s. Nate, you mentioned you have a player in the 260s. So just let's see if we have the same player. Who's the first guy that you want to talk about being too low in the 260s?
In the 260s, the guy that jumped out to me that I put 4 arrows up next to their name is at 265, Julian Strother.
Oh, Strother, good call. Okay, that's not who I had. Yeah, okay. Give it to me.
Okay. Who did you have? I love Julian Strother. I liked him coming out of Gonzaga. I liked his size and his shooting. I think there's the opportunity for minutes there. If he can take that, the actual 1 year experience and parlay that, then I think you could be seeing 25 minutes in a really productive role for him. You had somebody else though.
Yeah, I finally had to admit that I thought that Cason Wallace jumped out to me right away. I just think at 261, we're going to know what sort of minutes he's getting. And I think we'll know rather quickly. So, if he's starting and we know he can put up defensive stats and that team, plays at such a breakneck pace, I think I'm taking last round swings on guys with upside. And I want to see Cason Wallace's name closer to the 150s than the 260s.
Yes, he looked great in the playoffs. And I think his defensive his defensive potential looked amazing, and I really like his game a lot. And the fact that they cleared some space for him with Giddey getting out of the way. We'll see what happens with Caruso. I think it's a really good pick.
Let's keep coming through this. So this one I wrote down just because it's shocking. So the first round pick, Zachary Richichet, Zachary Richichet.
Richichet.
Yeah. 250. So I don't necessarily disagree with this, but it's just wild to see this year's number one overall pick at 250 when last year's number one overall pick is number one. And you just immediately start to feel for Hawks fans when you see something like that. So it's not really a fantasy take. I don't know if this is someone I want to draft. He seems very raw. I don't even know what his role is going to be. But yeah, number one overall pick being 250 is it's something.
Yeah, that's a real shame. I feel like you see some of those drafts every once in a while, and it's the fact that there's kind of nobody that's going to be up there. I mean, I guess there's going to be no rookies that probably would even be. Is there even going to be a rookie that's drafted? I don't even know. I mean, Alexander Starr, maybe you go with Stephon Castle. But maybe you go Zach Edey. I mean, but there's not much options there as far as rookies go.
Yeah, no, exactly. So that kind of jumped out to me. We'll keep coming through this. Some more rookies. Just a player that I think we know rookie guards can be brutal to start the season, but I think he could have a sizable role right away. And I might want to sneak him closer to the top 50, and that's number 201 for Bud Carrington, the rookie in Washington. I just think the usage could be crazy. The summer league reviews were crystal clear. This guy, is ready to go as a combo guard of sorts for a team that, let's face it, they're looking for anybody to step up and show that it doesn't have to run through Jordan Poole. So I think this guy could be putting up some crazy numbers. In points leagues, he'll be in the top 75, easy. But in category leagues, 201 still feels too low to me.
First off, let's go easy on the Jordan Poole slams. Second off, that is famed Blazers draft selection, Carlton Carrington, by the way, too. So I think that will come back to burn Blazer fans with that trade to Denny, but we'll see. Or Denny, that is. But no, I like that. He seems like a guy that could put up a lot of great hollow stats on a really tanking team. Yep. The only guy that we cruise past that I also like out of Denver is Christian Brown. I think that he's got an opportunity at 217 to kind of be able to 217 is too low too, considering that he's probably going to be the starter alongside Jokic, and those guys usually get a lot of great opportunities.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm not as interested in him as I am a player who's in the 180s, and that is Reed Shepherd. 186 for Reed Shepherd after the way he looks in summer league. He's behind guys like Kevin Porter Jr., Ben Simmons, Russell Westbrook, and Rui Hachimura. And so I'm like, is this the 2018 fantasy initial rankings? Like that, I don't know. There's just some dusty old names in front of a guy, the third overall pick, who I think is he's gonna be in the top 10 in the NBA in assists. I think that's pretty bankable. He's gonna average 6.5 assists. That's kind of where I have him pegged. So
wait, sorry, say that one more time again for me.
Reed Shepherd will be in the top 10 in the NBA in assists.
Whoa, that is a hot take. I like that.
Yeah. So
wow, I just wasn't sure they were going to find the minutes for him right away, just because with on Fleek and you have Jalen Green and then Amen Thompson. I kind of was like the player, not sure I see the pathway to 25-30 minutes, but take me through that. You see him starting then, or being a sixth man?
Yeah, I haven't went through the rotations, but I feel like it's just going to make sense for him to get as many minutes as they can get him. And I think that if he's not starting, that means he's going to be running the second unit. And yeah, I think he's going to get enough opportunities to rack up some assist numbers. So it's a little hot takey, but yeah, I envision Reed Shepherd getting into 6.5 assist range. So maybe he'll end up more in the 11 to 15 bracket. But as a hot take, we got to add 20% to what we believe. So yeah, I think Reed Shepherd, I think he's going to get the playing time to show that he's a hell of a playmaker. And 186, you're not needing top 10 in the NBA in assists, but I'm just saying that he's a little too buried.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's I like that hot take. I don't see it, but he looked amazing in summer league, and he certainly seems like a great player there, and the Rockets should be really progressing nicely. So there's a lot of should be a lot of easy passes for him if he's able to get
Yep.
playing time. The rookie that I liked in that category was Tsar, even though he's perhaps not good. The same reason you like Carlton Carrington.
Bob Carrington.
I think that Alexander Sarr perhaps has a fantasy friendly game as far as blocks and threes goes, and I think he's going to have a lot of minutes there. So I think he could have weeks where he'll have relevance, but I'm not planning to be drafting him.
I mean, Alex Sarr is one spot ahead of Daniel Tice, which tells me his ranking's too low.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just quick acknowledgement to the YouTube viewer. Attempted to share the screen there. Did something a little wonky, so I hope you hope that looked okay. But we're just going to stick to our nice split screen faces, and we'll take you through the rankings. But you can pull them up on Yahoo and just kind of run through them with us. So Nate, I think the next one we're going to be in lockstep on. That was number 153 for PJ Washington. How did we get there? We know he's a fixture in the starting lineup. Feels at least 30 spots too low. I think with PJ, it used to be that he was so inconsistent that he would have these spike weeks and then he would have weeks where he disappeared in Charlotte. But now in Dallas, maybe the ceiling's a little bit lower, but the floor is much higher. So how did we get to 153 for PJ Washington?
I'm having a hard time kind of readjusting to this new normal here that you're banging the drum of PJ Washington and I'm taken by surprise on this. And but I like this. I like where we're at on season 3. I think you kind of nailed it there. I really like the way you said that. I mean, I think we're playing with 2 fantastic assist guys in Kyrie Irving and Luka. He just is set up with so many great shots there. And you're right. He's a guy he's a glue guy. He's like a back end roster guy. He's not 150. He's 110. He's 100.
Yeah. I thought that was wild. I was offended by that one. We'll keep rolling here in the seems low category.
Oh yeah, I think right in that same range. I thought that I think this player is not good. I don't think Scoot Henderson is a good basketball player, but 150 for the chance that he's going to be figure it out. Rookie point guards always struggle.
Yeah,
he quietly had a decent last 6 weeks, in Portland. At 150, he's not being drafted. You need to be drafting him because there is a chance he puts it together and he's going to be very good. And so 150 is wrong there.
So to your point, Nate, so that's exactly the player I'm looking to take in this range, which is exactly why I would not be caught dead wasting a later round pick on Norman Powell at 118. Because you're taking shots on guys like that. So me, the one that jumped out along with Scoot is Pods over in Golden State at 130. I think he could crush this by 50 spots. I mean, if anybody benefited from off-season movement as much as Pods, I'm not sure who they are. They've committed to this guy. I saw a little blurb, a little birdie told me that Golden State wants this guy to put up, around 12 threes a game if he can next season. So I mean, he has such a fantasy-friendly game. Fiddle asked me about this guy during the pod and why he works for fantasy. I mean, he does a little bit of everything. He rebounds the hell out of the ball for a guard. You get out of position rebounds. He's a great passer. He's a great shooter. I think this guy could pop and be, we could be looking at a stretch where he's in the top 50 for a good amount of time. I mean, 130, I will be crushing. I will be smashing the draft button once I'm in the 100. So I won't be waiting till 130.
Do you see him as and I suspect we'll probably be doing a Golden State deep dive later. Are you just kind of as a preview to that, are you seeing him as the number 2 guy in Golden State as far as the final end of season rankings? Or are you seeing Kuminga? Are you seeing Draymond there still? Do you see Melton? I don't know who else.
That's a good question. Yeah. Melton was in a similar range. I saw his name here somewhere. And then, I mean, Draymond, I think, is in the 80s. Yeah, he's number 93. So, I would honestly I would take Pods before I take Draymond for sure. Take that shot. I mean, Draymond's going to miss 10 games alone just for kicking people in the nuts. So, Yeah. And then Jonathan Kaminga, I mean, he could take a real jump in scoring. When I was doing the NBA Futures pod and looking at some of the player over unders, his scoring line is at like 22.
Wow.
Yeah, so they have it set pretty
Wow.
high, but he's a pretty hollow fantasy player. You know, we
Mhm.
each took a turn on the Kaminga train last year in our league. And he's a fun guy to have. He can get you some pretty nice field goal percentage with the scoring, but I don't see like him as a player is ever going to get steals or blocks. He likes the mid range more than the 3 point. Yeah, I think Pods has a more fantasy friendly game. I don't think you should draft him before Kaminga. I think Kaminga will require much earlier pick, and you can still get Pods. But overall, at the end of the year, when we're looking at average ranking, yeah, I would think Pods would be ahead of Kaminga.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think the next pick that I just see is the ranking doesn't make sense because this is to me the most underrated pick that I'm seeing on the entire board here, and that's Steelbridge Coffee.
Nice.
If you head over to steelbridgecoffee.com/PTJ, check it out. You get fair trade, organic grown coffee, locally roasted, and it's delivered to your door. You get 4 pounds of it with a vintage basketball card in mint condition. And honestly, it's for the price of what you can buy at Safeway or Kroger. But instead of just getting regular Starbucks coffee, you're getting really premium, delicious coffee. And like I said, it's not going to cost you any more to that. So head over to steelbridgecoffee.com/PTJ and get the most underrated pick on the preseason rankings, in my opinion.
You have me on that one. I was like, what does he mean underrated? I was like hooked. I was like, oh, interesting way to put it. That was a good one. You had me. I was house sitting recently for a friend, and they had a Steelbridge Coffee like canister, and I got so excited. Somebody who used to live in Salem, Oregon.
A little growler. Yeah, we got one of those little coffee growler beans.
I sent you a picture,
cool.
right? Yeah.
You did. Yeah, I liked it.
Okay, so we'll stay on it. I mentioned Norm Powell. Josh Giddey being at 69. Like, I know people are excited about the usage bump in Chicago. I think that's kind of cool to see what he can do. He's not a 3 point shooter. He doesn't get defensive stats. And I just think there's much more intriguing names in his range. So I thought 69 was a little aggressive for Josh Giddey. What do you think?
I have no idea.
You're not supposed to say that.
No,
Oh, okay.
I feel like that is a tough one. No, It's a tough one for me because I have it written. Actually, I had him as too low.
Do you? Oh wow!
But I don't feel strongly about that, and so on one hand,
you're intrigued is the problem. You're intrigued as hell.
I'm intrigued because he has this fantasy friendly game. As far as he gets the rebounds, assists, points, steals. He kind of all those things, except for outside of shooting. He kind of kills you in some categories like felonies and misdemeanors, hurt you. But a lot of his game is really fantasy friendly. So I think I'm interested. I would probably 69 is tough, that number there for him. But
also, did Dan Titus have to land Josh Giddey at 69? Was that intentional?
All the guys there, come on. That's I'm not willing to go there yet, especially considering that he has 3 position eligibility. I think that seems like a fair range for me. So I'm gonna zag a little bit from where you're at there. There was a couple guys that you cruise past, including one guy on his team. That is Kobe White at 78. Makes no sense to me.
That's way too low.
Too low. He was 62 last year.
I missed that. Good catch.
Yeah, he was 62 last year. And now there's no DeRozan. Yeah. I think 62 is this floor, and you can get him right now at 78. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Like Cam Thomas can get all the shots he wants in Brooklyn. I'm not taking him before Kobe White. And Cam Thomas is at 76.
Elite shooter. He's and he's 6'5", so he gets rebounds. Right. That ranking will change. The other one that, anyway, and all jokes aside, I actually do believe this. Okay. I am being serious here. Jordan Poole at 95. Once again, that's an overcorrection. He was 89 last season, and he was atrocious the first 4 months of the year. I mean, he was probably 170 the first 4 months of the
But he's
year,
still
and then he
bad.
finally figured things out a little bit. He's not good. Like
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
not a
yeah.
good player, but he's the fact that he beat that last season. They didn't do anything to bring him any more touches in there or any competition. In fact,
Bob
they got rid
Carrington.
of Tyus Jones.
Bob Carrington.
There's less. They have Carrington. They have
Yeah, yeah,
Carrington. They
yeah.
have Malcolm Brogdon. There's a couple other guys in there, but there's no real competition for shots.
Yeah.
So I think
Okay.
that's an incorrect ranking.
Yeah, he's a pass for me. There's players like, for instance, Jalen Suggs at 91. I mean, wouldn't you much rather have Jalen Suggs?
Jalen Suggs I had as a too low as well.
Trey Murphy. I'd much rather take a shot on Trey Murphy. I'd rather take a shot on Jalen Green again at 101 than Jordan Poole. What about you?
Sure. Yeah,
There's
I think
only
all
so
these
many.
guys are too low.
So there's only so many guards I can draft. So for me, if I'm going to take a shot on a Wizards guard, I'm just going to make my last pick of the draft Bob Carrington and roll that out there. I mean, for me. So
yeah, maybe you're making a good point, and I feel like once we get a little bit closer, you can kind of take a look in. And when it comes to these ranges, you can know, oh, this range is when you can take swings on players, and that's what it seems like at this point.
I think when you start to zoom out and view the rankings as a path towards building a team, you'll see that you'll be less interested in building with Jordan Poole as a part of that plan than just the raw number jumps out as too low. That's my proposal.
Agree to disagree.
Yeah, well, we'll come back to it. Okay, but a player I think is a little more egregious at his spot to me. 63rd initial ranking for Brad Beal. That's too high, man.
Stupid.
It's stupid.
Yeah.
He's going to have the ball in his hands a lot less with Tyus Jones coming in with the best contract in NBA history. There, and it was pointed out by Fiddle as well when we were doing the futures that he must have been promised a starting gig or he wouldn't have taken that contract. I mean, that was a 1 year, come in here, run the show, get yourself a bigger contract somewhere where they can afford to give you a long-term deal kind of deal. The injury history, it's ridiculous. So for me, Bradley Beal has reached that Chris Middleton, it's not worth the trouble list. It's just not worth the headache in a category league.
Yeah, he's probably not going to play more than 60 games in the season. And when he does, he's just not the same player anymore. That's a name only player.
We will never do a do not draft show. I'm not interested in that topic. But if we did, Bradley Beal will be on it.
Yes. Yeah. That's a pass. I think the other thing that kind of jumps out to me when we start hitting into this range a little bit is you can see for right or for wrong, you can see the Yahoo algorithms kind of skew a little directional. So I think they skew a little heavy towards center stats.
Yeah.
I think they skew a little heavy towards defensive stats as well. And so I think you see a lot of the guys in this range, a lot of centers in there, like Jalen Duren at 53, DeAndre Ayton at 57. I don't know. I don't think you need to be drafting them that high. I think you can get that production later. And so I think that's kind of a little incorrect there.
What's interesting, Nate? I got to point out the crossover with football. Yahoo's ADP with those like mid-tier, they call it the running back dead zone. Those running backs, their rankings are always way too high. And Yahoo has a similar thing with centers. So I'm going to compare the centers of Yahoo's ranks to some of the mid-tier running backs in football, which is interesting. But like you point out, for instance, what did you say? And I like Jalen Duren. You said what was his rank?
His rank was 53, which seems crazy.
It is when you consider one spot later as Pascal Siakam.
Yeah.
Like really, dude? Okay. So like Pascal Siakam, small forward, power forward, center eligible. That team gets so many possessions, the way they fly up and down the court. He looked fantastic in the playoffs. He knows he's going to come in this season with so much confidence. He's going to know his role. He'll be a huge target for me. And last year, remember, I was kind of off him when we talked about, the Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam in the preseason. But at 52, oh my God, that's a smash.
Yeah. And I mean, and you have Halliburton setting him up, which I think is huge too.
Yeah. And that's not being baked into to that rank, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that was incorrect. He was 49th last season. So I think they're having him with no upside there. So I just kind of disagree with that. The other guy who I see is a very similar player, actually, in a really similar range, which I don't get at all, is Paolo Banchero at 50.
Mhm.
Once again, I mean,
Yeah.
he looked amazing in the playoffs. I mean, and I think that some of the efficiency has kind of hurt you a little bit, in his first 2 seasons. His
Right.
free throw numbers and kind of defensive stats haven't quite been there. But really,
Yeah.
he's an alpha. I can see a world of Paolo Banchero's top 20 this next season, and you're getting him at 50. I think that is huge upside in that area with minimal downside. I think that is going to change as well.
This is usually the type of guy that's getting steamed up at this point of the year.
Right.
And so again, it's just one man's initial rankings, who's Yahoo's main writer, Dan Titus. So my theory is that Dan Titus wants to get him in some industry leagues early and wants to set the market incorrectly.
Interesting.
I'd like to see some mock drafts and we'll see where Dan Titus is taking Pablo Banchero, a little conspiracy corner. So to stay in Orlando, and this is going to be a little segment here, Nate, of some former my guys who are not going to be my guys for me anymore at their current prices. I thought one of the worst ranks in the whole initial rankings was Franz Wagner at 43. I think for me, a ranking with some, again, Paolo, you said are like 8 spots higher. I'm going to need to see it first before I can draft him ahead of some of the names he's ranked in front of, because yeah, he's not that dude yet. And I think he's been anointed a little bit by the contract. I still like the outline of the player. I like his 3-position eligibility. That's cool. But yeah,
I'm taking 2 this year though, right?
I'm taking, what's that?
Is it's down to 2 this year though, right?
We got shooting guard, small forward, power forward so far.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Okay.
But I'm taking Pablo Banchero over him, Jaylen Brown. I'm taking Pascal Siakam. These are all guys who are going a little more, about 6 to 8 picks, or at least ADP has him 6 to 8 picks lower. Desmond Bane's right in that range. I'm smashing Desmond Bane before I'm doing Franz. Morant, there's a lot of guys. So yeah, for me, 43 is a little aggressive on Franz Wagner. Please tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, this is an interesting one because I was very curious to see what his rankings and ADP are going to be coming off of the playoffs, because if you had NBA TV, you saw his
right.
terrible performance in the playoffs.
Everybody with premium cable. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That didn't want to watch another matchup. But he was absolutely awful in the playoffs last year. He couldn't shoot, lost confidence, wouldn't shoot, and he just didn't look like he should even be a starter, which was different than the player that we had seen with his shooting his first 2 years in the league. And so that was a surprise, I thought. And so I think for me, I was kind of thinking, oh, I wonder if he's going to slip too far this season and we're going to see an overcorrection to this.
It's the opposite.
At 43, it looks like maybe we're not.
Right.
I mean, that's right. He was 45 ranked last season when it all said and done. And I think some of that was just because he had pretty good efficiency. I think that 43 is probably a touch high, right in the range. I was selfishly hoping to see him come in the 60s so I could snatch him up, but I think we're not seeing that at this point.
I would like to see, and these are just initial rankings. Again, I'd like to see how ADP starts to move some of these guys. And Franz Wagner at 43, I would be surprised if he stayed there. I would think that that's just kind of setting the market, and hopefully we'll get a little bit him creeping into the 50s, because I like the player too, but just not at the price.
Yeah.
Nate, this next one's going to depress me. I think it'll make you sad too. But this is a case of, I think sometimes in fantasy, I would rather find the next version of this player rather than chasing that player at their new ADP. You get a steal in a round, and it's a steal. And I was taking this player everywhere, except in our league record, I believe.
I think I know where you're going with
in our
this.
auction. Maximum Derek White.
Yep.
Yeah, at 36, man, you're drafting him at his absolute ceiling, and you're paying for what you didn't get last year. I think sometimes it's better to go find the guys who are going to give you a similar profile that are still sleeping on your draft boards. This is a very clear case of sometimes due to the ADP smash, the player comes in too hot. And unfortunately, Derek White's going to be in that range. I'm not going to be getting him anywhere.
Yeah, I totally agree too.
Cool.
I feel the same way. 36 is just a bit steep, even though he clearly returned that value last season. I mean, he was he earned this ranking. I think that
He
it's
did earn
just
the
not.
ranking. Yep.
Yeah, and I guess in the totality too, I'm also very curious to see. I'm a little nervous on Celtic players in general, or I guess I'm kind of curious, I
Let's
guess,
talk about it.
is
Yeah.
well, because they had the long playoff run, and then a
Right.
lot of these guys had the Olympic run right after
Right.
that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you see sometimes that like wear and tear kind of showing up the next season with some of these guys. And so
Well, luckily, the
I
Celtics didn't
was,
get much run on that team. If you're a Boston Celtics fan, so
yeah, that's true. I mean, they were there. And so I
they
guess
were there.
I'm wondering if Drew Holiday clearly got
He got
run.
run. He got run. Yeah.
Derek White got some run. I mean, he was there too, but
Stood in the corner.
they you know, obviously they won the championship. I'm curious to see what impact that this has on Jaylen Brown, who I think he's coming in ranked in the 50s. I think he's kind of rated there because he's really high floor. I think he's a low ceiling guy. Jason Tatum at 10. I'm not trying to jump ahead too much, but I'm nervous sometimes to draft these guys that have had such a long or a short off season.
Yeah, and it's something to think about. I think it can be overstated a little bit too. So it's one of those things like, when you hear like, oh, this guy's in a contract year, he's gonna smash. Well, no, sometimes it's exactly the opposite. He flops because he's not ready to accept his new role. Like, so I think sometimes narrative street can affect us a little bit more than the actual results of where the player's at conditioning wise. Drew Holiday's an interesting one. He's an older player, but man, he just always gets it done.
Yeah.
But Derek White wasn't getting a whole lot of minutes on those teams. But I like Jaylen Brown's price. I think it's nice. I don't think it's a smash. I just think if that's what you want on your team, you know what you're going to get, and he's really nice to build around. He's a nice piece.
So safe.
Anything else jump out as we're cruising towards the first round here?
I think that so we've now kind of we're entering into the top 50 at this point. I think that when we're looking at the like 50 through 100, I have just my paper is just littered with notes. Up,
You have a
down,
lot of
up,
paper
down,
too.
up, down. That's true. I got 2 trees worth, two
So bad.
medium-sized trees. But I think the top 50, there's less movement there. I think you're talking about, and you see this every year, where there's a lot of arguments about, hey, should this guy be ranked 13 or should be ranked 11? I think I guess as we're entering into the top 25, the only major guy that I have a question mark on is Jamal Murray. I think he's ranked 47. He was the 60th ranked player last year. He had a pretty poor performance for Team Canada in the Olympics.
How much does that matter?
I heard someone injured, little gassed. I mean,
let's talk about that. I heard someone else mention that too, and I don't frankly know how much I care about that. For thinking about, like, I'm not saying Jamal Murray. I have the opposite take. I'm just wondering, like, a poor showing in the Olympics. Like, how are we translating that to what we're expecting in the next NBA season, which just coupled with the bad vibes of Denver to end the season a little bit?
Yeah, I guess it was more for me, just like it seems like a lot of times entering the season, it takes a minute to kind of get into seriousness or kind of get into that competitive playing level. We obviously know he's clutch and he has that big time gene when it comes to it. But sometimes it took him a while to kind of round into form. And this was just kind of a more of an indication of like, oh yeah, he really kind of takes the offseason off. And so I think it was another question as he's getting a little bit older. He is a player that has been banged up in the past, just of because he's a smaller player that drives to the hoop a lot. So I think I had some hesitation with them in the top 50.
What I will say is Jamal Murray, although I'm a big fan of him, 2 things. A, his clutch performances don't matter in fantasy. And he is one of those players when the rooms are live, whether it be auction or snake, somebody always pays more than I want to. It's just been like that for years now. So I haven't had him in a number of years since kind of the breakout. So I guess in that way I am with you. It's kind of a placeholder ranking for a player that somebody always, I think, overpays for a little bit.
Yeah.
So
that's fair.
Speaking of overpaying, Nate, there are 2 names I guess this is, if you're going to do a 5-minute clip, this would be the one that people will want to glob onto. So personally, I'm going to save the age 35 season of James Harden for some old man squads. Shout out Dan Besbris, but a rank of 13th for a player that we're just banking on usage. I know Paul George is leaving, and he's so there's more usage to soak up. I'm not taking James Harden in that range. I'm not interested, dude. No way. Like we could comb
That
through
is
some
a
of the names.
terrible ranking. That's a crazy ranking.
Let me name. Okay, would you rather have James Harden or Donovan Mitchell?
Mitchell.
James Harden or Devin Booker next season?
Booker.
James Harden or Anthony Edwards?
This is not even close.
Yeah, James Harden or Kyrie. That's closer, right?
That was close. Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, it took so everyone I named was ranked lower than James Harden. Having Anthony Edwards 6 spots below. Well, I can't count right now, can I? That's just that's 5 spots. But I mean, it matters a lot. 5 spots matters a lot in the top 20. So I thought that was really bad.
Yeah, I mean, he finished 25th last season. He was good. I thought he was going to be a little cooked, and I didn't like the fit in Clipperlands, but he actually was very good there. I mean, he was the 25th top 25 player. As you mentioned, I mean, he's going to not have Paul George there. He is a regular season superstar. I mean, that's a fact. He's got a game that really provides when it comes to fantasy as far as like everything that you want. But 13, like he's getting up there in age, and he doesn't necessarily take care of himself. And I could also really see when you look at the West, I think the one thing that people are not talking about is looking at the West. There's 14 to 15 teams that plan to make the playoffs,
right?
And probably 13 of them are planning to win a playoff series.
Right.
That's not going to happen. And I think that there's a really realistic possibility of the Clippers on the outside looking in.
Oh, for
and
sure.
If the Clippers are in 12th place come end of February, is James Harden going to be pushing through a hamstring injury? I don't. Maybe not. I would be nervous drafting him at 13. I wouldn't be nervous drafting him at 30. I would love that, but 13, no way.
Which is where it was going last year, and I know that there was a lot of confusion around. Okay, is he? Well, there was a lot going on with James Harden this time last season, and it was very confusing. So people got a deal, but I think the contrary argument would be, well, he just keeps getting it done. So why am I going to overthink it? I'm just going to take him where he tends to finish. And I just think at age 35, what you just outlined with the direction of the team, how loaded the West is, just like we said about Trey Murphy and how many paths there are for that to work at his ADP, there are too many paths to this being a bad price.
Mm-hmm.
So lockstep.
Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah, I think for me, the takeaway in this range.
I got one more before we do a takeaway. I'm going to hit you with the big one. Okay. So you can't, this is an old adage in fantasy, Nate. We've said it before. You cannot win your draft in the first round, but you can lose your draft in the first round. 39 games played last season. This man has never played more than 68 games. I just want more reliability in a first round pick, so somebody else can have Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, and this isn't clickbait. With a rank of 7, there's nothing wrong with that rank. Solid rank. In fact, you could argue it's low. But I'm not going to be the one to build my team around Joel Embiid.
That's probably the correct per game ranking.
Right.
There's no way that he's 7 total. I mean, the 76ers have all but telegraphed that he will not be shooting for the 70 game situation anymore. They're going to be trying to keep him healthy for the playoffs.
Yeah.
So he's probably going to be playing 50 games.
Please show the camera your papers, Nate, please. Your papers.
All these.
Do we have enough time for you to comb through every paper and see if you can find the totals rank for Joel Embiid last season? No. Crap, he'll do it. He'll do it.
I don't know if this is going to be great podcasting material.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. No, but it's a good.
Yeah, I think it is. I love that pick. It's like there is some real value, I think, especially when it comes to preseason. You and I have had some discussions on what's the more valuable metric, per game ranking, total ranking. And I think that I think we're kind of in agreement here that per game value is, when it comes to preseason, is the is the better metric to kind of be looking at for most players. But there is some exceptions, and you need to know who those exceptions are.
That's a great point. Clip that. Put that on your TikTok. So, all right, Nate, go ahead and wrap this up and kind of encapsulate kind of some of your takeaway thoughts.
Yeah, the only other takeaway I had from this kind of upper range, a lot of it, I was like, yeah, this all looks pretty good to me, was that we're kind of finally seeing this rise of the young players arrive. So I think that the ability to kind of snake some of that value from these like third, fourth year guys that we've been excited about is no longer there. So you're having to pay for that if you want that production this year. So looking at Chet at 19, Anthony Edwards at 18, Scotty Barnes is 16, Wembanyama at 1. I mean, these are
Right.
there's no longer, you're not grabbing these guys in the 4th round. If you want them, you got to be paying premium prices for it, which is kind of interesting and cool, because we've seen this the old guard kind of maintain such amazing production into their mid and late 30s that they've been holding on to those rankings, and we're finally seeing a little bit of changing in there.
Yeah, it is interesting. I actually thought when I saw Edwards at 18, I was surprised that's a little low. I think in most leagues, someone's going to pull the trigger on him in the late first. I think that at the 1-2 turn is where you're going to, I think the debate for a lot of people is going to be Anthony Edwards or Kevin Durant, or Anthony Edwards or Steph Curry. I think that's what we're looking at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is going to be rising for sure.
We will definitely do our too high, too low by round show, where we go through each round and we highlight 1 or 2 ADPs that we feel are too high or too low, and kind of take you through in that way. This was just kind of an appetizer. We wanted to go through the very initial ranks and just kind of give some quick takes. It's very early in the season. Happy opening NFL week to all who celebrate. The Chiefs and the Ravens kick off on my birthday, so I'm really excited about that, to see some of this come to life. And then once those teams are live, it's fully into basketball. So it's kind of funny, you spend all this time building something up, and then as soon as it starts to produce results, you ignore it so you can research the next thing to build up.
Better not dig into that thought too much.
Is that anything like having kids?
We'll see. I'll tell you the second one. Yeah, I'm not gonna pull at that thread too hard.
Okay, so please do, as always, rate, review, subscribe to the show. We appreciate any feedback. These are going to come out on YouTube right away. If you're listening to the audio, this was recorded on Labor Day weekend, September 1st. And just look for our content to start rolling out in due time. And we love y'all. We're happy to be back. So for Natron Clean, this is your boy Flyin J, reminding you to always stay aggressive when it comes to something that you want, but also to remember that you should be respectful when somebody's not interested in hanging out with you. So that's dating advice. That's the Flyin J's dating pod. So
yeah, that's a good takeaway. That's a good life lesson right at the end. And yeah, good start to season 3. Love hanging out with you, and happy pre-birthday there, Jay.
Hey, I appreciate it. All right, so next time y'all hear from me, I'm gonna be different. We love y'all. PTJ.